Hi guys, we're in Unit 8, Day 9. We're going to be solving for an angle, which we call inverse trig. So let's just go through and read this. Make sure for this lesson you definitely need your graphing calculator, so if you just need to pause it and find that calculator, go ahead and do that really quick. But going through the top, what if you don't know any of the non-90 degree angles, but you know two sides? Using trig, you can still solve for that, solve that whole triangle. In order to complete today's lesson, we need to know how to type inverse trig functions into our calculator. Remember, to undo a trig function, we take the inverse, and we'll talk about the steps and what we type in the calculator in a second. First, make sure you check your mode, and then make sure your calculator is set to degrees. So let's take a minute and make sure you have your graphing calculator. Your graphing calculator, I just have mine next to my computer right here, so have yours next to your paper. I find the button mode. Okay, it is right next to the yellow button on the top left. I click mode, and about 3 slots down, it'll say radian or degree. You want to make sure the degree symbol is shaded in, it's darkened. You do not want radians, you want it to be in degrees. So I don't know if you want to circle that part of your notes or star it. That's really important when you're doing these problems. You're solving for an angle. Angles are in degrees, so you want to make sure your calculator knows, okay, I'm in degree mode. Keep reading here. The inverse of sine is sine inverse. With this little -1 symbol, that tells us that we're in inverse mode. The inverse of cosine, the inverse of tangent, they all look the same with that little -1 symbol. That's the inverse symbol on the top. In order to hit that or get that to come up on your calculator, you hit second and then the trig function to type this in. Again, I'll give you the steps. I'll help you type it in a second when we do these next 3 problems. Okay. Use a calculator to solve for the angle, round to the tenths. Really quick, remind yourself, okay, what am I rounding to? Tenths, 1 decimal place. So just keep that in mind when you're getting some of these answers. So let's start with the first one. Cosine of b is equal to 7/19. So think about here, we're looking for this variable, capital B, which would be an angle. All capital letters are angles. So when I type this in, I want it to look like that inverse symbol. So I'm going to type in or hit the buttons second, and then since this is cosine, these are the 2 buttons I hit. So I hit the second button, I hit the cosine button, and in my calculator, this symbol will come up and it actually opens parentheses for you. So right now, that's what you see in your calculator. In those parentheses that it opens up for you, you want to put in the fraction. So 7/19. And then you want to close the parentheses, and then you hit enter so it can do the work for you. It gives you a decimal. You want to go to 1 decimal place, so 68.4. You're looking for capital B. Capital B is an angle, so that means my answer needs to have that degree symbol. So this angle with this cosine value is 68.4 degrees. Okay, the next one, number 2. Looking for theta. Theta, again, we talked about this very briefly before, is an angle. Just that fancy math notation. So if we want to get the inverse of this, the angle, we're going to do second. That's that first button. And then tangent for the second button. So I type in second tan. This inverse symbol will open up on your calculator. Inverse tangent, it puts a parenthesis there for you. You want to put the little fraction. So 101/90, close your parenthesis, hit enter so it can do the work. It gives you 48.3. Again, theta is an angle, so that needs to be in degrees. That's your units. Make sure you have that. Okay, last one. Sine of A, capital A, so that's an angle, is 14/21. We want to know, well, what is that angle? So second sine. Got to type that in my calculator, second sine. It opens up that inverse symbol. I put 14/21 in there, that fraction. I close the parentheses. I hit enter. I get 41.8. Again, units would be degrees, so 41.8 degrees. I knew to round to 1 decimal because it told me in the instructions to go to the 10th. So again, those boxes, those are the buttons I hit to get the inverse symbol. That's how you type it in your calculator. Now we're going to do some problems to tie that together. Here we go. Let's actually solve for some pieces. We actually have a triangle. Let's go through it. Using this triangle, problem 4a, please give the measurements of angle A round to the 10th. Okay, so we're still going to 1 decimal. We're finding angle A. So what we're going to do, I'm going to circle the angle, my reference angle that it wants me to go off of. From here, I'm going to label across from that is opposite. The diagonal is hypotenuse. I don't know the adjacent, so I'm just going to leave that off. If you think back to SOHCAHTOA, if you have opposite and hypotenuse, O and H, I'm going to use sine. So I'm going to set up sine of whatever I circled. In this case, I circled a capital A. Sine of A is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. This looks exactly like what we just practiced typing into our calculator. I want to find capital A. How we do that? If we type the inverse in our calculator, which would be second sine. So I take a second, I type that in, second sine. This, and I'm going to run out of space, I'm going to put it up here. This notation pops on your calculator. In the parentheses, you want to put 3 divided by 7 because that's the fraction I'm dealing with. I want to hit enter. And you're going to the 10th, so 2 decimal places, so I get 25.4 degrees. That would mean if I could fit that in here on my triangle, this little corner, that little angle is 25.4 degrees. That's what we just found. Next, problem B. I'm still looking for angle A. I circle it. I'm going to start to label. I have opposite and I have adjacent because that's right next to it. It's touching. I'm going to go back and think about SOHCAHTOA because I have to decide which trig function I want to use. So I think about SOHCAHTOA. I have opposite and adjacent, O and A. If I have O and A, I want to use tangent. So I set this up. Tangent of whatever I circled, that would be capital A, is equal to opposite over adjacent. That's 11 over 3. Again, just like what we practiced typing in our calculator, I take this, I'm going to do second tangent, or second tan, and I'm going to have this inverse symbol pop up on my calculator. In the parentheses, I put 11 over 3. I want to hit enter, and I should get my answer, 74.7.8 if you're rounding kind of all the way from the back there, but you want to put your degree symbol. That would be this little angle. Again, I'm just kind of shading it right here. That would be this little angle piece, that corner piece that we're solving for, so I need my degrees. Okay, flip it over. On the back side, we have a couple more problems, maybe a little bit longer, more pieces here. So solve for angle Y in the triangle. Then, once we get that, solve for angle X, round to the nearest 10th. So go in order here. Solve for Y. That's the first thing it wants me to do. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to circle it, and I'm going to label. I have adjacent to angle Y, and I have hypotenuse to angle Y. I'm going to think about SOHCAHTOA. If I have A and H, I'm going to use cosine. So I'm going to set this up, cosine of whatever I circle, so that would be cosine of capital Y, is equal to adjacent, so a 6 over hypotenuse, which is 11. I'm going to type this into my calculator because I need to get that angle. I do second, that's my first button. Cosine is my second button, so second cosine. This symbol pops up on my calculator. I put 6 over 11 in there, and I hit enter. Oops, I messed up here, so let me go back. Inverse cosine, 6 over 11, and I get 56.9 degrees. Should make that a little smaller. That is that corner piece where Y is, kind of this piece, if you can see where I'm shading up at the top. Now it says then solve for angle X. Well, I have a really easy way for you to solve for angle X, is what we practiced all of last week. If I know 2 of the angles and I'm missing 1, then I know that this triangle adds to 180, so I can kind of do process of elimination. I'm going to take 180 degrees, subtract the 2 things that I know. I know the piece that I just solved for, and I know that that box in the corner is 90 degrees. So if I do 180 minus 146.9, again, you could just type that straight into your calculator. Give it a second, let your calculator think. I'm going to get 31.1, again, degrees, because it's solving for that angle in the corner. So if you just need to clarify, right here would be angle Y. That was the first one we solved. The second one we just solved with process of elimination would be angle X. The reason I know they're angles is because they're capital letters. They're tucked into those corners. Now, let's put everything together, what we've learned in this next problem. Solve for the following, round to the 10th. So still going to one decimal place, we're just going to find all of these pieces. It wants big A, big B, little c. I know something that I can do pretty easily here to solve for little c. We did this last week. If I'm given two sides of my triangle and I'm missing the other side, I can use this thing called the Pythagorean theorem. Let me write that down. Pythagorean theorem. It is a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. I'm going to plug in what I know. I might even have to label a couple pieces on my triangle. Across from big A is little a. Across from big B is little b. Across from big C is little c. So I know A, I know B. I could plug those in. I have 6 squared plus 4 squared is equal to c squared. I have no idea what c squared is. I'm going to leave it as a c because that's what I'm trying to figure out. I end up with 52 is equal to c squared. Then I have to square root this. If you type the square root of 52 into your calculator, you're going to get a decimal. It's about 7.2. Again, not degrees. That was a side. Maybe inches or feet. That's a length. That's a distance. So I'm going to leave it as 7.2. But that's how I would find that missing side. Maybe the quickest, easiest thing to do right away. Okay. The next pieces are these angles. I don't know much about these. I'm going to solve in order here. So I'm going to start with angle A. So I'm going to circle that because that's what I want. And I'm going to label. So angle A I circled, and off of angle A I have opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. So I did purple with purple. Okay. I'm going to use the two that it gave me. So I'm going to use opposite and adjacent. So I need to think back here to SOHCAHTOA. If I have opposite O and adjacent A, I'm going to use tangent. So I'm going to set this up. Tangent of whatever I circled, tangent of A, opposite, which is 6, over adjacent, which is 4. I type this into my calculator, the inverse trig stuff, and I get second tangent, 6 over 4, 56.3 degrees. That is angle A. That is this, I'm doing it in purple, this corner piece right here. We talked about another easy way that we could solve for that other missing angle. If I have two of the angles and I want to find that missing angle, angle B, I'm going to box it in green. I'm looking for angle B. I can do process of elimination. 180 degrees minus the two things that I know. I know that the one is 56.3. And I know that the box in the corner is 90. So if I do 180 minus 146.3, 180 minus 146.3, I get 33.7 degrees. That would be that missing angle. So I need my degree symbol. That's just process of elimination. If I have the other two, I know it equals 180, so I can kind of work backwards to find that missing piece. If I went too fast, please pause the video, rewind the video, go back and rewatch something. Make sure you have those calculator steps down. Make sure your calculator is in degree mode, otherwise you might get different answers. Not radians, you want degrees.